Welcome back to the 13th episode of the Diving Into Sports podcast with your hosts Lyle
and Nash.
Henry. Let's dive into today's topic. The 2023 Barbasol Championship wrapped up with Vincent Norrman getting the win at 22 under in a playoff with Nathan Kimsey, and a lot of good golf being played. As always, I know I say the same thing every week, but it's always true. And great win for Norman. I was happy to see him win over Kimsey, and he had a great round 4, caught fire, never looked back, except for on 18. He bogeyed, had a sloppy hole, but managed to find the win in extra holes. But it wasn't just those two. There were a lot of players at the top that had a chance at winning just until the very end. So it was a tight leaderboard, which you love to see.
Yeah, I mean, it was so fun to go to, because it was it was an electric PGA Tour event, which it's so cool to go to an event like that because you feel like you're really there with the players because you're so close to them, and there were so many fans. It was really a cool environment to be at in round 4. But before we jump into the actual round we were at, which was round 4 in Nicholasville, I'd like to ask you, what were some players that you were disappointed to see miss the cut, or you thought would play the weekend but didn't end up?
There were a few players I wasn't too happy about because they missed the cut, and I was really looking forward to seeing them in round 4, which we already known for a while we were going to go that day. Harry Higgs, Kiradech Uffy Barnra, and Jazz Janawatananand all didn't have good showings, especially in round 2. Kiradech and Higgs really blew up and missed the cut, even though they should have both made it, and Jazz just had a horrible week. He'll be at the Open, though, and I wish him well. I hope he rebounds nicely after just shocking disappointment this week. I mean, he was over 21 overall, just really not good to see. But I tried to look on the positive side, watched a great Sunday, watched specifically a few players. I'll get to them in a minute, but it was still really fun without them.
Yeah, I mean, for me at least, I was on the more lucky sides. Almost all of my favorite players didn't make the cut. The only one of my bigger favorites that missed the cut was Manu Gandas, who was the only Indian player in the field, actually. He needed to birdie his last 4 holes in order to play weekend golf, which he obviously failed to do. But that didn't take away my experience at all. It was still awesome because I saw really my favorite golfers I ended up. But we will slide into that in a couple minutes, as we've already said. But let's now transition into the weekend, as by this point after round 2, Lucas Glover was still in control pretty much, I'd say. He was up by a couple strokes leading in Nicholasville. Lucas Glover, who's won on the PGA Tour before, but then in round 3, Trevor Cohn shot 63 and went really low. The PGA Tour rookie, and names like him and Adrien Sadier from France start to rise to the top of the leaderboard, and it became more jumbled going into Sunday to the event we were going to. And actually, that night before round 4, I would like to just say, we actually went out to dinner in Lexington, and we saw a player in the Barbasol field, and that player was Alejandro Del Rey from Spain, who was actually one of the first players we saw on the range the next morning. We went the whole day on Sunday, so that was really cool to see him there. That was a crazy experience to just see the Barbasol car and then see him eating next to us. That was super cool. We talked to him for a brief bit, and that was really neat. Yeah, and then back to who I watched in round 4. First off, I'll say Sung Kang I saw for about 6 holes. He was the first one out that morning, on his own, which was a super cool experience to see someone play on their own. He moves so much faster than the group behind him, obviously. I was walking with his dad, it looked like, for the whole time, and he played well, almost had a hole-in-one, actually, within 3 feet of a hole-in-one on a tough par 3. He's one of my favorites, and I enjoyed seeing him especially because, he was a featured player one year. The only one, he's the only one you can watch
in that group. The group behind him, I also watched for about 6 holes. Greg Chalmers and Patton Kazai are two of my favorites as well. Greg Chalmers is not only the king of Twitter, but he also has a great personality on the course, and he's like 49, so he doesn't have many PGA events left. So I like seeing him in one of his last ones, probably. And then Patton Kazai is a gentle, giant, big guy, nice guy, great golfer, won on the PGA Tour, and had a good round 4, saw him make a few great shots. Like to see him as well. And then the last group I saw for the entire back 9 was Matty Schmidt and Ryan Brehm. Matty Schmidt's one of my favorites. He was a low amateur at the British Open a few years ago, and he has so much potential that just hasn't been uncovered yet. But
played at Louisville.
He's a nice guy. Yeah, played at Louisville. I like him a lot. And then Ryan Brehm flies under the radar every week. He was probably the biggest presence in the field, very large man, but he's also had one of the most success of anyone there. He went low in round 4 and almost climbed up near the top.
Yeah, some great groups you saw indeed. Sung Kang, very interesting story, teeing off on his own, lightning fast. But then some groups I saw for the majority of the time I like to touch on. The first group I saw was for the last 10 holes in their round. Jason Scrivener and Aaron Cockerill, they both primarily play on the DP World Tour. I'm a big fan of Scrivener, so that's why I really was interested in that group, although I do like Cockerill a lot as well. Cockerill's newborn baby and his wife were there, so that was really cool to see them, knowing that they were related to Aaron. But yeah, Jason had a really nice round. Scrivener, he shot under 6. Cockerill shot under 3. That was a fun group. They were getting along well. The caddies were too, so I really liked watching that. They were one of the first groups to tee off. And then I also saw Ryo Hisastuni from Japan with Chad Ramey for a couple of their first holes, who teed off a bit later. And that was a cool group, as Ryo is one of the rising stars. He's from Japan. He's 20 years old. He also plays a lot on DP World Tour. I really liked watching the foreign players this past week. It was a very unique experience. So that was really cool. But then probably the big group that I watched for the longest was Jaden Shaper, who was probably my favorite golfer in the field. I'm a huge fan of him. I was lucky to get a signed ball from him after the round. He's a really nice guy. And also playing with him, though, was Nathan Kimsey, who later went into playoff, almost won the Barbasol championship. He went into playoff with Vincent Norrman, who ended up winning. But Kimsey, really a crazy story. I mean, he was actually out for 4 months and just came back 3 weeks ago after a very bad wrist injury that happened at the Singapore Open. So he came back and had a great showing last week in Denmark, which propelled him to play this week. So that was really cool to see that group. 2 really great golfers, and I was glad to see people that had a lot of momentum, as Kimsey and Shaper both playing great golf right now. So that was really cool. It was really fun to see those leaders out then, like Adrien Sadier, another good DP World Tour player from France. He's playing with Norman. There were some really cool international groups at the end that I liked watching.
Yeah, I mean, co-sanctioned event with the DP World Tour and PGA Tour, so you get a unique opportunity to see just a very diverse field that those players are very grateful too for the opportunity to play in the States that they otherwise wouldn't have. Such a well-run event, such a great venue. Obviously a lot of walking, but that's what you expect when you go to a golf tournament. There were some great holes. I would say my favorite hole is probably 15, a long par 5. Actually not long, because people were eagling it all week. Most eagles on the PGA Tour on that hole this season, out of any hole this season. So very gettable hole, and it was just fun to see the balls come onto the green and see if it would get close for eagle. And yeah, 15 was my favorite hole. Love to you can just stay at one spot the whole day if you really want, because no matter who you're watching, it's going to be entertaining. And it was, trust me, it was really entertaining to get to see that playoff, especially the drama. And congrats to Vincent Norrman on his first win. I'm sure it'll be one of many. and Nathan Kimsey fell short, but great showing for him.
Yeah, it was an absolutely amazing experience. You had Nathan Kimsey, who won the Challenge Tour rankings last year, versus Vincent Norrman, who went from Division 2 golfer to now PGA Tour winner. It was a very fun experience. Barbasol Championship, great tournament. We'll love to attend again in the future. Super awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, you can listen to Diving into Sports on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Pocket Casts, and Stitcher. We'd love it if you could follow us on all of those platforms. And check out our Twitter account. Our handle is @Nash Lyle.
By the way, we're now available on Google Podcasts as well.